Good morning, everyone. It's a beautiful day out here in Buckeye Lake in Ohio. And unfortunately, the world doesn't look so beautiful today. But we're going to get right into it. I just want to ask you, would you please hit a like and subscribe? It's totally free. With that, let's see what Netanyahu's saying today.
Just one question, Jeremy. Thank you.
Could you, without the United States, without the refueling capabilities, for example?
We're going to thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you, everyone.
You exhausted your question. So what the guy asked him was, were you going to be able to continue this without the United States? And they didn't want him to answer that question. So that's the main problem with America right now. When you're dealing with the split with MAGA, when you're dealing with the Democrats, everyone is saying enough is enough. We're doing too much. And by doing too much, it seems like Pete Hegseth is doing totally too much. In this video, I'm going to explain to you what everyone keeps saying Trump doesn't have. And what everyone keeps saying Trump doesn't have is an end game. I beg to differ. Trump knows exactly what he's doing. It is a mad king's plan, but he definitely has a plan. And in order to get that plan off, here is one of the major things you have to do, which Project 2025 already laid out. Only have people on board that want to follow Trump, not the law.
You do not fire your Army Chief of Staff in the middle of a war for no reason. You fire him because of what comes next. Pete Hegseth called General Randy George on April 2nd and told him to retire immediately. The Pentagon confirmed it. No reason was given, not publicly, not privately. A senior Army official told Fox News that Hegseth offered George nothing. No misconduct, no operational failure, no policy disagreement on the record. Just a phone call and a career ending in the middle of one of the most significant American combat operations in 2 decades.
Is that legal?
George is the 24th general or Admiral Hegseth has removed, but he's not the 24th. He's the one that matters. The Army Chief of Staff, the man whose signature sits between a president's intent and the order that sends soldiers across a beach or into a tunnel complex. The replacement is Vice Chief General Christopher LaNave. He was Hegseth's senior military aide before his appointment. The man who carried the secretary's briefcase now commands the Army the secretary is reshaping. The chain of command did not break, it shortened. The distance between a television studio and a combat order just collapsed to 0 intermediaries who were not personally selected by the man giving the order.
So,
a former Fox News weekend host just fired a 4-star general with combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, replaced him with his own former assistant, and did it during a live war in which the next decision could put American soldiers on Iranian soil for the first time in history. No hearing was held, no misconduct cited. The Army woke up on April 3rd with a new chief it didn't choose in a war it didn't start, preparing for a phase the previous chief apparently couldn't be trusted to execute.
I'm glad he did it. I'm just going to state that fact right now. I'm glad he did it. Because we are letting the people of the armed forces know, no matter how hard you work, no matter how good of a soldier you are, no matter how loyal you are to your country, they don't care. What matters is what I tell you to do, whether it be within the law or not. Because you have to understand the end game, which I'm going to get to in a second. But I have to take you through the stages because for years I've been screaming this was going to happen. They wrote it all down. Why don't people understand that it's actually happening? I have no idea. So, first phase, get all loyal people in. Now that time is getting short and we're getting broker and broker as a country, as a whole, as the GDP drops tremendously, as the inflation rises, as the jobs have not come back and are continuously on a decline, along with the retail. This was all a part of the plan. So let me continue on to bring you up to date as to why this needed to happen.
The question is not why George was fired. Every general in the building knows why. The question is what order is coming in the next 14 days that required removing the one man in the chain of command who might have said no. The war has no perimeter. The chain of command has no objectors, and the next phase has no one left to stop it.
So now that we've cleared the way for them to do whatever they want, we totally lack the experience to get it accomplished, which is why I'm saying I'm glad they did it, because of the obvious turn that's going to happen with the men below them. Now we may get more action on people saying, no, I'm not doing that. Here we go.
At least 30 generals have refused to execute Trump's orders to commit war crimes and send U.S. ground forces to Iran. At least 30. So far, 12 of them have been fired, including the commander of the U.S. Army Ground Forces. The rest of the generals will also be dismissed. Pretty much every commander who controls ground forces has to go. Ladies and gentlemen, this is pure, unadulterated fascism. If J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio have any smidgen of a conscience or any smidgen of a desire for future political office, they will assemble the cabinet, use the authority of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, and remove Trump from office. After that, he must be arrested, prosecuted, convicted of war crimes, and sent to prison. We must end the lawlessness of Washington, D.C., and bring the rule of law back to America.
Like I said, we already knew this was going to happen. And in order for Trump to get off his total end game plan, he had to tell people up front, give them time to think about it, weigh their options. There's no way he can accomplish his goal unless he has totally loyal people. The other obstacle is that we need to get out of NATO in order for him to break international law. Because make no mistake, everything they're planning to do is against international law. That's been in place since the end of World War II. This was the exit from NATO laws.
We also don't fight with stupid rules of. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Just common sense, maximum lethality, and authority for warfighters.
Today, Pete Hegseth fired 3 more senior military commanders from the Department of Defense, bringing the total to about 20 over the last year. First of all, who these folks are, they are some of our most experienced, dedicated military commanders with hundreds of years of experience between them. Some of them have 10 plus combat deployments over the last 20 years. And removing these people without cause, without notice, without any replacement in many cases is putting our service members at great risk.
I want to explain that a lot of this is illegal. We know it's illegal. We don't have the votes in the House to impeach or remove anybody. That's why it's so important for you to know who your primary candidates are now. Don't be wishy-washy. Don't wait till the last minute. Find out where their money is coming from, because just as they're a Democrat, they might be a plant like Tulsi Gabbard. They might be a plant from the Republican side acting like an independent or Democrat. So now that that experience is gone, we are seeing the repercussions of the lack of experience in our great War Secretary, Pete Hegseth.
The president's demands, we have not reached any of those objectives. I have full confidence that the president is going to find some way to make this happen. But he said that we want to dismantle all major nuclear facilities. That has not happened. The end of of uranium enrichment on the soil. They're still enriching. The transfer of the enriched uranium stockpiles out of Iran, that hasn't happened. The acceptance of intrusive international inspections, they're still not willing to do that. And they have not suspended their ballistic missiles program. They're still firing them off to stop the production of the long-range missiles. That's just a few of them on the president's proposal.
Now, I want to make it clear. As you've seen on the screen, the reason we need the Strait of Hormuz to continue to be open is because our whole economy, since World War II, all the investment money is hedged on that petrodollar, meaning that everybody in the world has to buy oil in American dollars because that is the exchange that everybody has. Now, the Strait of Hormuz has greatly diminished the dollar because Iran, as everybody should know by now, has stated they only want to deal in the Chinese yen in order to hurt our economic status. If the petrodollar falls at this present time with a $38 trillion debt, the only way to save us is to jack other countries. Did you hear me? Did you hear me? The only way to save us is to jack other countries. If petrodollar fall, AI falls. There'll be no more money for them to invest, to hedge their bets on. The petrodollar falls, our whole economy falls. That is how we're able to borrow so much money. Yes, I said borrow. Because people know as long as the world is moving around with them petrodollars, that our treasury bonds are good. Without the petrodollar, we fall. That's the whole point. Everybody said, we got oil, we got plenty of oil. I see you don't know a lot about the oil business. We do have oil. I'm going to later explain why that oil does not matter when you don't have the refineries to condition the oil to what it needs to be. In other words, the Venezuelan oil, Canada oil, and Mexico oil is far better than our oil. And we only have mostly refineries for that thick crude oil, which we don't pump out of the ground. So you can miss me with that, oh, we got tons and tons of oil that we can't sell like that good oil. Now, moving forward with the Secretary of War.
Iran begged for this ceasefire.
Oh my God, I can hardly keep a straight face when you're in here. It just sounds like an SNL skit, and it's the real thing.
Ooh, when Peep Hexas see this, he gonna be pissed.
Yo, Pete Hexas, this one's specially for you. You punk ass rapist bitch, straight from Iran. Your tattoo cover clown with that cafe ink on your arm. Think you a crusader? Nah, just a drunk infidel. And
They begged. They begged.
And we all know it. Operation Epic Fury was a historic and overwhelming victory on the battlefield. A capital V military victory.
Let me explain that. So you can look at this like PS2. We sitting on the board and we see all these targets and we bombing. Ooh, look at that target, boom. Look at that target, boom. Look at that target, boom. And then there are, what I call dummy targets that they put out there, like them old ass Navy boats. He likes to say, we destroyed every single, those were the old boats. Those were the old boats. What they're not telling you is that a lot of the things they blew up, they wanted us to blow up. The reason why they wanted us to blow up is because they wanted us to use our $1 million ammunitions to do it. And maybe even catch some of our $1 billion aircraft and knock them down. So you put these proxy targets out and hopefully they fly over. Well, at very minimum, we know you're using $1 million torpedoes to get this stuff. We know you're using $1 million ballistic missiles and things like that. That's why they sent so many drones for our air defense systems, which, by the way, they knocked out all our air defense systems on every military base in Saudi Arabia. So when you say, oh, yeah, our military capabilities was on point, but you didn't achieve any objectives besides playing target practice, a PS2 war. That's the one thing they got to brag about. We blew up a lot of stuff. It's a straight from you open. And how much money did you spend doing that? And how much do you got left? That's the real issue. But the billionaires have bought all the major media outlets and they're carried on their stations. So they have to put things like this out to make you believe. And I'm not saying we're losing the war. I'm just saying they ain't hitting none of their objectives. And I believe it may take another 10 years before they even come close. If you look at the numbers, Israel only got 10 million people. Iran got 93 million people. We're not sending that many people of ours over there, or there's going to be a super draft, and then there'll be another J6 before that happens, I promise. So we couldn't handle 35 million people in Afghanistan for 20 years. They rocked our boat. Left out there with our tail between our legs, even left all our equipment. 35 million. They didn't have half the stuff Iran has. Iran is a real nation with a real army, with real military capabilities. So we couldn't handle a bunch of ragtag Taliban people on camels with AKs. No jets. They ain't had no jets, no Navy, no submarines, no ballistic missiles. They ain't had none of that. Whooped our ass for 20 years. Now, we're going to win some scrimmages. But in the end, in my opinion, if they don't drop a bomb, if they don't go through diplomacy, this is going to last another 20 years. But the billionaires are making it real, available for you to believe you should invest. You should invest in what we're saying. Because Lockheed Martin and all the military, designers for these weapons are going to get paid again for the next 20 years. If the billionaires have their way. By you believe in this propaganda.
Democrats are already saying that this is taco. Trump always chickens out. Let me give you another acronym. Nacho. Never avoids confronting hard obstacles.
Mr. Vice President.
Never avoid hard obstacles. Never avoid confronting hard obstacles. He thought that was really something. Not taco, it's nacho. Oh my God. It's embarrassing. Just like JD Vance.
Iran is continuing to block the Straits of Hormuz. Do you have an expectation of when that strait is going to be open?
Well, we've already seen an increase in traffic today. Hopefully we'll see an increase in traffic tomorrow. We actually think that we are seeing signs that the Straits is starting to reopen.
Okay, so 3 votes went through before the ceasefire was cut off. 2 of which was Iran, 1 was China, and 1 paid a toll. $2 million a vote. That's what they charge. Before the war, we was totally free. Trump would like to tell you they don't need to go and get their own oil or buy it from us for a problem that you caused. One day he say he need help, next day he don't need help. The man is a bipolar, paranoid, schizophrenic with an impulse disorder. Y'all don't know. Y'all don't know. That's what that is. Look at Trump and you'll see what it means to be a bipolar, paranoid, schizophrenic with an impulse disorder.
Okay. So we've seen an increase in traffic today. That's what the vice president just said. As I mentioned before, Bloomberg reports that just 3 ships were observed leaving the region, at least 2 of which had ties to Iran. Iran is publicly claiming that the strait remains closed. They're continuing, as far as we know, to charge fees to people who want to go through. But JD Vance says nothing to worry about. All signs are positive.
tweeted out that 3 of the 10 points in the ceasefire framework have already been violated. They're distrustful of the U.S. What do you make of him tweeting that out before negotiations?
So I thought it was interesting, actually, because I did see that tweet from Ghalibaf actually just a couple of minutes ago. Let me just say this. I actually wonder how good he is at understanding English, because there are things that he said that frankly didn't make sense in the context of the negotiations that we've had.
So you recognize during the conversation that you believe that the man didn't understand anything you were saying or wasn't even speaking correct English, and you decided to continue the negotiation without asking for clarity by another party. That's what we supposed to believe. That's what we supposed to believe. I'm going to tell y'all for a fact he did not talk to that man. I'll tell you that for a fact. I'm going to tell y'all for a fact that we're relying on texts and secondhand information, somebody passing this information on in, or is that what he said? Okay, tell them this. You know what I mean? This is all for theater and show, as you will see.
Just listen to how J.D. Vance tried to explain away the differences between Iran and the U.S. on the question of nuclear enrichment.
The second thing Ghalibaf said, which again I found fascinating, is he said, we refuse to give up the right to enrichment. And I thought to myself, you know what? My wife has the right to skydive, but she doesn't jump out of an airplane because she and I have an agreement that she's not going to do that because I don't want my wife jumping out of an airplane.
What the fuck did you just say?
It is just getting ridiculous at this point. I don't even know how to save face for them. There's no way. But we're going to get to the meat and potatoes of this because I promised you all the end game. And this is the end game, which is why all these steps must be taken to accomplish this end game, which will never, ever happen, in my opinion. Because if it does happen, and we're talking about the Monroe Doctrine, which Trump has renamed the Donroe Doctrine, which is to take over the entire Western Hemisphere, which you cannot do without the funding of the petrodollar, first of all. Second of all, you cannot do without the help of the NATO countries, because as soon as we get out of NATO, I guarantee you they're going to do what France did.
Between July 2025 and January 2026, the Bank of France sold 129 tons of gold that had been stored at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York and replaced it with equivalent reserves purchased in Europe and stored in Paris, which is roughly $15 billion US. This marks the first time in approximately 100 years that France holds zero gold in the United States. France's total gold reserves, 2,437 tons, worth over $200 billion, now sit entirely in French vaults. The French central bank claims this was purely technical, just upgrading old bars to modern standards, but a leading German economist has called for Germany to remove its $142 billion in gold from U.S. custody, calling it too risky under the Trump administration.
And with that, the dollar is going to fall. So you're not going to be able to afford this Western Hemisphere imperialistic empire. But let's take a look at it from the Don's perspective.
Improvising in Latin America, he's reviving a 200-year-old strategy with 21st century tools. The Monroe Doctrine, a principle the U.S. now aims to update. After 2013, Washington pulled back from its traditional role in the Western Hemisphere, allowing others to move in. By 2024, China's trade with Latin America had surged from about $10 billion in 2000 to roughly $519 billion, giving Beijing leverage over key ports and critical resources. At the same time, Russia armed governments in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua, and Iran supplied drones to Caracas. In response, Trump took bold action. U.S. forces captured Nicolas Maduro, a close Russian ally, demonstrating that Moscow could not defend its partner even in the United States' backyard. Washington moved rapidly, sanctioning Iran-Venezuela drone networks, offering Argentina a $20 billion economic lifeline, and opening talks with resource-rich Brazil. The goal is clear: reassert U.S. dominance in Latin America without endless wars.
Justify the...
Did you hear the without endless wars part? Once this begins to take even further shape, depending on how we end up in the petrodollar. That's why we got to do that first. We got to keep that money coming in. But if that does not shake up, right, I believe he's still going to try it, which is why the banks made the move they made, where your money is no longer secure.
People were sleeping last Wednesday. The people in charge. What banks are quietly doing with your money? You have exactly 90 days before the rules protecting your hard-earned money at the bank change forever. While most people were sleeping last Wednesday, the people in charge of your bank's safety held a quiet vote. They decided that you can handle more risk, and they didn't even ask for your permission. Did you know for every $100 that the government promises to protect, they only have to have $1.17 set aside? Yeah, $1.17. That was the safety net before they voted to make it even smaller. Today, I am pulling back the curtains on the 4 layers of exposure sitting on top of your checking account, your 401k, and the deed to your house. If you have a checking account in the United States right now, you need to watch this video. Let's go.
Noel. Yeah, she can fix that. You gotta get it done, no, you need to do it better. Well, she can fix that. Yeah, she can fix that. Investment to get back, trying to get a big stack. She can fix that. Let's fix that.
Layer number 1 is the most shocking. Your money is not there. In March of 2020, the Federal Reserve reduced the reserve requirement for banks to 0. That means your bank is not legally required to keep a single dollar of your deposit on hand. Think of it as a car garage that rents your car out on Uber while you sleep. Layer 2 is even worse. In 2008, we had bailouts. Now we have bail-ins. Under the Dodd-Frank Act, if a major bank fails, they don't use taxpayer money. They rescue themselves using your deposits and bond holdings. When you deposit cash in a bank, you are legally now an unsecured creditor. You gave them cash, they gave you a receipt, but they did not give you a guarantee. Layer 3, Wall Street is first in line. I know you might be thinking, but Noel, I have a checking account that is FDIC insured. Well, the FDIC holds about $129 billion, but they insure over $10 trillion in deposits. That is $1.17 for every $100. But here is layer 3. Wall Street gets paid first. Wall Street gets paid before you do. Under current laws, derivative contracts, the massive bets banks make on Wall Street, legally get special treatment. For example, JP Morgan alone holds roughly $58 trillion in derivatives. You are standing in a line you didn't even know existed behind $200 trillion in Wall Street side bets. This isn't a theory. It happened in Cyprus in 2013, where depositors lost nearly 50% of their money overnight.
You gave them money, they gave you a receipt, but they did not give you a guarantee. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then you need to research your banks and see what is now guaranteed. Because on March 29th, them CEOs woke up and voted that they only need to hold $1.37 to your $100 on hand. That's now a law. So if it all falls apart, they put in another clause that Wall Street gets paid first. So you need to start diversifying your funds. I'm just saying that from a falling empire's perspective. If it don't fall, great. But if it does, you don't want to end up like Crete, where they lost 50% of their bank holdings overnight for something just like this. Now, once chaos begins to assume in America, then the people are going to get very distraught, which is why ICE is locking up all opposition pre-imperial takeover. That's what's really happening right now. That's why we need so many ICE facilities, because we are going to have open air prisons if he gets off what he's trying to do. Pay attention.
Use of military power in Venezuela.
America will never allow foreign powers to rob our people or drive us back into and out of our own hemisphere. That's what they did.
And of course, with a personal twist.
The Monroe Doctrine is a big deal, but we've superseded it by a lot. They now call it the Monroe Document. I don't know.
But it might not stop at Venezuela. Donald Trump and members of his administration have already issued warnings to several other countries and territories, including Venezuela's neighbor Colombia, already under financial sanctions imposed.
Has anybody heard anything about drugs coming out of Venezuela and Colombia lately? No, because it never was about drugs.
By Trump. Cuba, which has close ties to Venezuela.
Marco Rubio wants to run Cuba. Y'all don't know that? Y'all don't know that? Yeah, he got a bone to pick with them ever since his drug dealing uncle or drug dealing sister's husband got locked up. You know, back in the day, he was selling them keys back in the day out on the Florida streets. Y'all remember that? Y'all remember that? Yeah, Marco Rubio, drug boy. Yeah, grew up in the house with a drug cartel kingpin who was killing DEA agents and everything, or DOJ agents. One of them, I think it was DEA agents they killed. Yeah, real talk. I'm wondering how much leverage does Trump have on him because of those old cases.
And has come under pressure from the White House.
Now, see, the other thing is that we know Trump is leveraged because he put a blockade on Cuba. Then all of a sudden, he lifting sanctions on Russia once he found out they was giving Iran satellite intelligence. He's like, hey, man, don't tell them everything. Don't tell them everything. We'll lift the sanctions. Oh, you want to sell some oil too? Yeah, we'll do that. Now, remember, he told NATO, go get their own damn oil if they want some, or you can buy it from us. Now, I'm trying to figure out, why aren't we selling Cuba oil? Oh, that's right, because we don't have the refineries for our dumbass, cheap-ass, badass oil. What does Russia have on Trump to allow them to go and sell and to lift their sanctions? Because it couldn't just be because they was giving satellite information to Iran. We're spending $1 billion a day to have boats out there talking about a blockade, and then you let Russia through. Make it make sense? I'm just saying.
Mexico, a country the president has complained about for years, saying he would have to do something about cartels running the country. And his primary target, Greenland.
And you haven't heard anything about Mexico either. Because when he told them, hey, stop selling to Cuba and we all gonna get rich in the end. And she did it. The Mexican president did not want to buck with our army out there in the sea, but he let Russia through. Now he back on this Greenland stuff, talking about he want to get out of NATO. Y'all know Trump been getting out of NATO since the last presidency. When he told him, he said, y'all not paying enough money into the defense fund, so I think I'll let Russia do whatever the hell they want. So don't give me this crap about NATO didn't help us. The only time NATO's ever been used was when 9/11 came. That's when all the countries came together to save our ass from terrorism. So don't give me that this is something new. He been wanting to get out of NATO because he already knew what this plan was.
A semi-autonomous part of Denmark, Trump insists he needs for U.S. national security.
We're under our new national security strategy. American dominance in the Western Hemisphere will never be questioned again. Won't happen.
But this has put Trump at loggerheads with European leaders, as Denmark is a member of NATO, an organization which includes the US, which is supposed to work collectively towards security. Denmark says that if the Trump administration takes Greenland unilaterally, it would mark the end of the agreement.
And you know, it all began with, if you want to know the truth, Greenland. We want Greenland. They don't want to give it to us. And I said, bye-bye.
And that is our president. That is the plan. That is the end game for him to run the entire Western Hemisphere. But note the gaps. Trump has never been good at math. All the bankruptcies tell you that. And everybody that's within this orbit is under leverage. So he's going to have to keep getting newbies who have even less experience. That's why he's losing all these court cases. He is down to the worst of the worst of the lawyers. Now he's down to the worst of the attorney generals. It just keeps getting worse and worse as this goes on. So what I see the Democrats doing, everybody thinks that, they don't have a plan. They're just waiting till they get power. They're not trying to create too much noise because they remember what happened last time. You know what I mean? 2 impeachments and all of that. But now he's even more corrupt because the actual DOJs are more corrupt than William Barr was. In my opinion, it's going to come down to them arresting judges and governors. I hope to God that don't happen. But in order for him to continue on his way, when he loses the House, then we got a lame duck presidency. He's going to have to make good on all these billionaires' investments. And that's the only way I see he's going to do it. So the Don Road Doctrine is the end game, people. You can pay attention all you want over there in Iran. But in the end, that's the end game. But if that doesn't fall through on, the Iranian side and him being able to have the Strait of Hormuz opens, then our allies are definitely going to turn on us financially. Financially. And they're going to do what France did. And they're going to say, oh, bro, we're not keeping our money over there. Yeah, y'all about to drop any minute. Y'all about to fall off the map any minute. And that's why they are making new coalitions as we speak. And they know it. $38 trillion, people. $38 trillion, people. We ain't got it. And once they start turning in these treasury bonds, we really gonna be hit. I'm just saying.